Why do we feel it's necessary to yak about bullshit in order to be comfortable?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Welcome back to the channel, everyone. It's I, your Reluctant Gringo, and we are south of the border of this on May 12th, 2025. So I hope everybody enjoyed their weekend. Everybody had a good Mother's Day weekend. I know we did here. And yeah, but we're back at it. It's another day in Trump land, and the news just keeps on coming. There's a lot, actually, when you start digging into the fine print of what's going on. Now, when you first read, this morning I got up and I was reading the headlines, and it didn't seem like a lot was going on. And I started digging in, trying to figure out what exactly was going on, what was being said. There's actually a lot. And if you're not paying attention to the details, you're missing. You're missing out. And you could be missing out on things that affect you positively. It could be things that affect you negatively. So we're going to get into it. We're going to start off with prescription drugs in a second because there was an executive order signed. And I've got a lot to say on this subject, believe me. I think most Americans do. We're going to get into the Republican tax bill because you get a lot of media outlets announcing that they're going to cut Medicare, or Medicaid, and some people's hair is just on fire, and the Democrats are putting up this huge resistance and getting on TV and calling it a travesty. But we're going to get into it. We're actually going to figure out exactly what they are cutting. Again, the fine print, the details, folks, the details. We got to know the details. And once you know the details, the story's a little different. We are going to touch on South Africa. Why? Because it's just a strange story. And I'm really not. Honestly, the more I read about it, the more I'm like, I want to feel one way, but I really can't feel that way. It's just, if you know anything about the history of South Africa, but we're going to get into that in a second. We're going to get into, there's a famous trial starting today. We'll touch on that, as gross as it is. We'll touch on that. But we will, we'll see how that's going because we do have certain news coming from that. And so, I think that's a pretty full slate as it is. Oh, yeah, and we talked with China today. I forgot about that. China. We have China news. China. Apparently, there's a framework for a trade deal. There isn't exactly a trade deal, but the markets are liking it. Markets are up over 1,000 last time I checked. Can't argue with that. Can't be upset with that. So I'll be happy with that. The dollar's looking strong. Again, the stronger the dollar, the more pesos I get for my dollar down here. So go dollar, go, baby. Go dollar, go. All right. But let's get into the first story. And I think it's a really important story because I think a lot of people don't quite understand the significance of this story. I think a lot of people who take prescription medication in the United States do, especially if you've traveled to a foreign country and had to buy that same medicine in that foreign country. And you're like, really? That's all it costs? Well, President Trump signed a new executive order today. So let's actually take a look at that executive order just in brief here because I love it. As soon as they sign it, it's up on the website. I love the transparency. No, I don't like all the executive orders you sign, don't get me wrong, but I love the transparency and that you actually have a president who talks every day to the media and answers questions. You may not like the answers, but at least he's talking to you. All right, at least he's talking to you. So let's transition out of this. Let's get there. All right, there we go. Okay. So this was signed this morning in the presence of RFK Jr., our Health and Human Service Secretary, delivering most favored nation prescription drug pricing to American patients. That's a mouthful. What does that mean? Well, we all know prescription drugs cost a buttload in the United States, right? We all know that the minute a doctor writes us a prescription, we all get that gut feeling like, oh, crap, how much is this going to cost me? Hopefully my insurance covers it. Hopefully this. Well, and we all, not a lot of people like to think generic. Like listen, I'm an older guy, all right? I'm married to a wife who takes a prescription medicine. I take prescription medicines for certain things, right? If you've been with me long enough, you know that I do have a condition where I do have to take prescription medicine for the rest of my life. Well, that stuff gets expensive in the United States, even with insurance, okay? So what does this mean? pricing to American patients. American pharmaceutical companies spend millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars developing new drugs. Fair enough. That's what they do. Well, to recoup those costs, they charge Americans the most amount of money. But they want to be in the foreign markets and make that profit too. So what do? They offer those same drugs that we're paying tons of money for in the United States at hugely discounted prices. And we're going to take a look at a list of those. I found a really good article on a listing of some of the more recognizable prescription drug names that a lot of you are probably on. Some of them, one of them I know this family takes. One of them I know my brother takes back in the United States. So I can't imagine how much he's paying for that one. And see exactly how much they cost in the United States, how much they cost in certain other countries, and how screwed you are getting as an American. And believe me, as an American with prescription drugs, look, Republican, Democrat, we can all agree on this. Americans are getting screwed 6 ways to Sunday on prescription medicine. All right. And just a side note, the easiest way to go from being okay financially in the United States to being bankrupt for years or in trouble financially for years is to have a health crisis, to have a health emergency, because healthcare just costs a lot, right? Never mind prescription drugs, we can get an whole thing. But this is part of it, right? This is part of that problem. And at least we're going to try and do something about that problem. But what does the executive order exactly say? I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm just going to read a few key highlights if you'd indulge me here. So the purpose of this is that, here we go. The United States has less than 5% of the world's population and yet funds around 3/4 of global pharmaceutical profits. Imagine it. Almost 3/4 of the profits that pharmaceutical companies make come from the United States. But we only have 5% of the population. I'm sure there's plenty of other sick people out there in the world. In fact, I know it. This egregious imbalance is orchestrated through a purposeful scheme in which drug manufacturers deeply discount their products, and that's for sure because I'm going to show you some examples, to access foreign markets and subsidize that decrease through enormously high prices in the United States. Basically, they're making you pay the burden, folks, in the United States. And I know that because I get my prescription drugs down here in Mexico. By the way, pharmacies are everywhere. I love pharmacies down here. They're awesome. They're incredible. I'm going to get into that in a second. Pharmacies are great down here. Not only are they cheap, but you can get shit. First of all, prescription. They shouldn't even call it prescription drugs down here. You don't need no prescription down here. You just walk in. Just say, I want that. It's awesome. Okay, with maybe 5% of the drugs down here, you need a prescription because they're kind of controlled. But if you know the pharmacist, it's okay. All right, here we go. Americans should not be forced to, here's the policy. Americans should not be forced to subsidize low-cost prescription drugs and biologics in other developed countries. No, they shouldn't. And face overcharges for the same products in the United States. No, they shouldn't. All right? Americans must therefore have access to the most favored nation price for these products. All right? So what does that mean? Well, if we don't start getting favored nation prices, basically if we don't get the same prices or lowered prices or reasonable prices based off of what other countries are getting, he's probably going to regulate the shit out of the pharmaceutical companies, probably put tariffs. Maybe put tariffs on things, right? He loves that word, tariffs, regulations, right? Imports, exports. I'm sure he's got a boatload of tricks to do. All right. So within 30 days of this date, here we go. Within 30 days of this date of this order, the Secretary shall, in coordination with the Assistant to the President for Domestic Policy, the Administrator for the Centers of Medicare and Medicaid Services, and other relevant executive department and agency officials, communicate most favored nation price targets to pharmaceutical manufacturers to bring prices for American patients in line with comparable developed nations. Basically, they tell them, this is what you're going to charge Americans for this drug because this is what you're charging other people around the world. Or at least we're going to give you a reasonable, like, okay, we might not bring it down to the exact thing that you're selling it for in Costa Rica or Turkey, which, believe me, I mean, yeah, pharmaceutical companies would probably start laying people off and their profits take a dive. I get that. I don't want to see companies, but right now they're kind of gouging us, right? So they're going to say, hey, this is your target price. Get there. All right. So they're going to make up all sorts of rules. They haven't put any teeth or consequences or too many restrictions here, but they will if they don't get what they want. So this executive order, I think it's a long time, but this is one of those executive orders that we can all get behind and be like, hey, can we stop making friggin' medicine so expensive for people, right? We all heard the stories. People on Social Security, they got to make a choice. Do I buy my medicine this week or do I buy food? Do I buy my medicine this week or do I pay for heat? No one should have to make that choice. No American citizen should have to make that choice in the richest country in the world. All right. So we should make medicine affordable for everybody. Everybody. It shouldn't getting that type of medicine, getting life-saving medication or life-sustaining medication should not be a privilege. All right. It should not be a privilege in the United States of America, but it is right now. And we're trying to change that. This executive order is going to try and change that. All right. So with that, let's take a look at this little report here. Now, this report is from the Office of the Assistant Secretary for Planning and Evaluation. All right. Again, when you start digging into reports and things like that, Health and Human Services reports, it's scary. Like, you can go to the Department of Defense and read the reports that they have for the money they're spending on the things that they're spending it on, and you'd be like, that's kind of whack, right? And you kind of be like, all right, well, it's military. You kind of need some of this stuff, okay? Kind of don't wish we didn't spend so much money, but you're kind of like, I'm okay with it, right? But then you get into like Health and Human Services, and you get into the health of the country, and like what the hell's really going on out there? Holy crap! There's some scary shit. But anyways, this is all about prescription drug pricing comparisons. Now, this report was created and then sent to Congress and sent to the desk of the Vice President and the President of the United States. So let's go. Here we go. Key findings. And that's all we're going to go over with this report is the key findings. I don't want to bore you by reading the whole report. I did. It's a lot. Okay. Here we go. Systematic comparisons of drug prices among countries are based on data from a broad set of drugs. So they didn't just go for one drug, two drugs, three drugs. They did a broad set of comparisons between what you pay in the United States and what you pay in other countries. All right. Let's go right down here. All right. Prices in the United States are higher than those in all comparison countries. This is the stuff that should piss you off if you're an American. And if you've had somebody in your family or you yourself are ill and need to spend money on drugs, on medicine, I should say. I wonder if the word drugs is really something I should really be saying. I try to use prescription meds as best as I could. Every time I say drugs, I think we're all taking something else. Anyways, here we go. U.S. prices were 256% of those in 32 comparison countries combined. In comparison with individual countries, U.S. prices range from 170% of prices in Mexico, and I can vouch for that, and that's a minimum, all right, to 779% of prices in Turkey. All right, so there's a drug out there, there's plenty of medicines out there that if you pay whatever you pay in the United States, you're paying almost 800% more than what somebody is in Istanbul. That's insane. That's insane. There's something wrong with that. There's fundamentally wrong with that. The gap between U.S. prices and prices in other countries was larger for brand name originator drugs, basically brand name, non-generic, the regular stuff, right? We all heard, you want to go get Lipitor, you can't afford the Lipitor, so you get the generic, and hopefully it's the same thing, and hopefully it's supposed to be the same thing. But sometimes you react differently. It's not as effective. Let's face it, right? They always try to push the generic because they know it's cheaper. But sometimes you want the brand name. Like there's a medicine a member of my family takes that they need to take the brand name. They've tried taking the generic, and the generic actually makes them sick, makes them feel ill, makes them feel nauseous. They take the regular one, boom, it works fine. Hey, I don't know how it works. I ain't a chemist. I ain't a biologist. I ain't a doctor. I'm just telling you what it is. So we have to end up buying the brand name. U.S. prices were 84% of prices in all non-U.S. countries for unbranded generics. So you're paying more for generics in this country too. So go figure. U.S. prices were 190% of prices in other countries after adjusting U.S. prices downward to account for rebates and other discounts. So even with rebates and discounts and all the deals you're getting and all the little apps you see on, you get these little apps, the RX this and blah, blah, blah. It'll make your drug, you're still paying more. You're still getting screwed 6 ways a Sunday. All right. But you're probably like, Gringo, give me an example. Shit, yeah, let's give you an example. Here we go. From International Living, I love this. Lipitor. We've all heard of Lipitor, right? It's the cholesterol drug. It's the drug that if you've got high cholesterol, take this so your heart doesn't stop. All right? So here we go. Lipitor is $436 cheaper in Mexico or 28 times cheaper than in the United States. I can vouch for that. It is. I mean, think about that. Lipitor. This is a drug which I don't know how many thousands, maybe even a million or so, millions of Americans are on. I mean, it's Lipitor. It's like the Coca-Cola of drugs, okay? It's just how many people are on this thing for high cholesterol, because let's face it, high cholesterol is a thing in the United States. It's a thing down here too. We all like to eat. It's okay. So we take our Lipitor and hopefully our cholesterol goes down and we don't just, seize up one day, but I mean, imagine that. You in the United States, if I need Lipitor and I want to go to the pharmacy, I am paying 28 times cheaper than you. And I'm only a few thousand miles away. Imagine how cheap it is in other countries, Eastern Europe, Asia, things like that. Okay. They're just saying Mexico. All right. And by the way, if I need Lipitor, I just walk into the pharmacy and go, give me some Lipitor. And they're like, yeah. And they're like, here. I'm like, okay. Because pharmacies down here are a friggin' blast. By the way, you get stuff in pharmacy, you talk about insulin, they sell it off the shelf here. It's crazy. The next time, I have to ask permission because they get very sensitive about this. I will take a video next time I go into a pharmacy, okay? And again, they are everywhere. There's big pharmacy chains everywhere. And they're awesome, like I said, because you can get your prescription meds. You can also get a bag of Funyuns, a Snickers bar, a couple bottles of soda, maybe a keg of water, and some tobacco. Like, it's a party. Like, it's a party in that pharmacy. Anyways, so you go in and there's insulin right there, and it's wicked cheap. Because I remember, you guys are paying like hundreds, and it's out of control raging, right? It's like, here for $5, and I'm not using the pesos, I'm just converting in my head. For $5, here's your weekly insulin. And there it is. You want penicillin? You got the flu. You could take. I'm allergic to penicillin. I can't take penicillin. But if I could, and I needed penicillin because I got some really bad flu and I want some antibiotics, right? I just walk in and I can take off of the shelf the preloaded syringe of penicillin. The preloaded syringe. You heard me correctly. The preloaded syringe of penicillin. I pay for it. I walk out and I have two choices then. I can either man up, stick it in my ass myself, or I can go pay somebody who's authorized and trained to stick it in me for me. Sounds weird, but it's really cheap. But that's what we do down here. My wife used to tell me stories all the time when she was a kid. Yep, they were sick. So they go to the pharmacy. Oh, they have the flu. Here's your penicillin. Boop. Easy. No doctor's visit. No, just boop. $5, cheap. It was awesome. It was great, right? All right. So that's Lipitor. Glucophage, right? This is a high blood sugar for type 2 diabetes. Yeah, type 2 diabetes. Not much of that in the United States, right? Right? That's not an epidemic in the United States, but it's $22 cheaper in Costa Rica, or more than 2 times cheaper than the US. Why? Who knows, right? Because you guys are getting gouged. Ventolin is $55 cheaper in Panama, or 6.5 times cheaper than in the United States. And Ventolin is for bronchospasms, to prevent bronchospasms. So, breathing, that's important. Synthroid. Okay, here's one that hits close to home. Used in the treatment of hypothyroidism and enlarged thyroid glands and thyroid cancer, which is something that is very prevalent in the United States. Extremely one of you, everybody who watches the video knows somebody who has an issue with their thyroid. So here you go, Synthroid, which, by the way, a year ago was taken off of a lot of insurance companies' preferred drug listing, and you had to pay full price. They weren't covering it. I had to call and be like, hey, I need this covered because you've been covered all. Had to fight and get an exemption. Okay, but Synthroid is $129 cheaper in Vietnam and 63 times cheaper. 63 times cheaper than the US. 63. That's ridiculous for this drug. For this drug that a lot of people need. A lot of people need in the United States. Nexium. We've all heard of Nexium. That's the acid reflux thing, the heartburn, whatnot. All right. Ulcers, inflammation, esophagus. Right. $100 cheaper in Thailand, or 4 times cheaper than the United States. Okay, and he again, here's the same stuff that we just talked about, right? Lipitor, $452 in the US, $15.87 for 30 tablets in Mexico. All right. Again, 40. Here's like, I mean, it's just an amazing comparison. Here's the Synthroid. You're paying $131, almost $132 for 100 tablets. If that price has probably gone up since this report. In Vietnam, you're paying $2. $2. Why? Because Americans are getting screwed. It's not like they can, we need to, we spend a lot of money on research and development and this, whatnot. Yeah, but you also give your guys, $100 million bonuses every year. So I don't know. Don't piss on my leg and tell me it's raining. Okay, this is the way it is, and this has got to change. This is ridiculous. This type of pricing is ridiculous for Americans. And guess what? I know you probably think, well, why do you care? You live in Mexico. Because I'm American. I got people who live in America. I love America. I love my country. I may live down here, but I don't think it's fair for what's going on to you people, right? But if you want to come down to Mexico and buy your drugs, hey, you can do that. I mean, if you come to Mexico, just go to a regular pharmacy. Go to a regular established pharmacy, right? What do I mean by that? You can walk down the street and there's this little mom and pop window opens up and you're like, what's this? You guys selling candy bars or something? Nope. Selling prescription medication. And you're like, really? Don't do that. Don't take it from there because they found out that a lot of this stuff is laced with fentanyl. All right, because it's not being made by the actual manufacturer. It's counterfeit. So, but if you do come down, whether it's the Guadalajara or whatever pharmacies, you'll see them. The Buenavides pharmacies, you'll see like they look like actual pharmacies with real pharmacists. They look like you walk in, there's aisles, there's tiled floor. You'll see it. It's fine. You'll get it. You'll pick it up. All right. But if you need, and you don't want to spend that kind of money, and you just come on over the border, come south of the border. Let's buy like this, and I won't tell you what the brand name is because I'm not advertising. Okay. This is my friend. This is my favorite of all. Now, when I was in the United States, I suffered from migraines and headaches and all sorts of stuff due to, whatever reason. And so I used to take Excedrin. I used to love it, right? Why? Because it's loaded with caffeine and pain medicine, right? You should boom, take a few, gone. This stuff, this is the Mexican version of Excedrin, but it makes Excedrin look like Pop Rocks. Okay, 2 of these, you see it in the future. It's great. No matter what's wrong, I got a headache, I take 2 of those. I got a backache, I take 2 of those. I feel depressed, I take 2 of those. I don't know. I can't think of what to do next. I take 2 of those. Right? Those things are great. They are loaded. It's like taking 4 cups of coffee and some pain reliever. You're good to go for like 12 hours. But for this. A box of these, which they're made by a very reputable company, Bayer, which is, a very giant prescription. For a box of these, I pay for I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So for 15 to 20 of these, I pay $1 US. $1 US. I don't know what you pay for Excedrin now. I pay $1 for these things, and they're great. Is Donald Trump right to attack prescription drug manufacturers? Hell yeah. Is this executive order a good thing? Hell yeah. Do the markets not going to like this? No. Are the companies not going to like this? No. Are they going to be lobbying against this like crazy? You betcha. Is it going to be a fight in Congress because pharmaceutical companies put a lot of money and donations towards the elections of these people? Yeah, it's going to be a fight. This one's going to be a fight, folks. We're talking millions of dollars at stake here. Millions. People don't like to lose millions. All right. But yeah, it's a good idea. It's about time. And, but yeah, I mean, it's a reality. This is the reality that you're living in. And he's really, of the things that I've complained about. And I had a lot of complaints about this man over the last couple days. Some of the things he did. All right. I like to call balls and strikes, right? I'm not a zealot and I'm not a hater. All right. So I like to call balls and strikes. I like to call it like I see it. This is one of those things that's like, it's about time. It's about time someone just pointed at the pharmaceutical companies and said, stop screwing Americans on this shit. Okay? So, but let me know what you think. And if you think it's fair, if it's not fair, and how that's going to go. I appreciate anything you had to say on the matter. But with that, let me transition back to this. And, woo. Are you a cancel? So you really think my data is old? No, I live my data. But I appreciate you telling me. I go and get prescription medicine in Mexican pharmacies all the time. He can cancel whatever discount that Biden put in. Whatever Biden did, I'm sure was not appropriate for what it is. It's a case of cost. It's simple. It's absolutely simple. So sorry I didn't see your comment, R. I don't know if you would call yourself R. All I know is that I used to pay out the ass in the United States for prescription drugs. Here, I pay almost nothing. And that's the way it should be. So regardless, Republican, Democrat, whatever policy you want to call it, they shouldn't be charging you this much money. And if you can argue that all you want, if you hate Trump so much that you want to argue against prescription drug costs, okay, that's fine by me. So I'm just telling you the reality. I live it. But that's your opinion. That's cool. I got you. Oh, by the way, if I'm late on comments, I do apologize. It's not that I'm ignoring you. Normally, I have my little buddy next to me. And I don't, because he's been up late doing some work, and he's still sleeping. So I'm flying solo. Okay, let's get to this one. Now this one is just listen. The picture of this lady makes me laugh. What is that? Make South Africa great again. Okay, we are not allowing refugees in from other countries, but we're going to allow refugees in from South Africa. White refugees, because white people had it so bad in South Africa for many, many years. And I mean that facetiously. Okay, listen, if you don't know what South Africa's history, they had basically apartheid. What was apartheid? Whites ruled everything. They took the land, everything. It was horrible, right? To be a black person in South Africa was absolutely horrible. It was just miserable. So much so they were the pariah, or one of the pariahs of the international community. Well, then Nelson Mandela got freed. De Klerk freed him, and he helped turn that country around in a cultural and social way. Has there been bumps in the road? Yes. Has there been struggles? Yes. Has there been violence? Yes. It's been messy. We can all agree that it's been messy. But there is this thing where Trump is now saying, and here's one of those things where I disagree with him, that we need to take in white refugees from South Africa because they're being, I guess, discriminated against. So one of the things that's happening is a lot of land. Okay, so when whites took over South Africa, they took a lot of land away from the African population, the black population. They took it away. They just took it. And they said, we're going to take this, and you have no choice about it. Well, when apartheid ended, you looked at the black population and said, okay, you're free and you got all your rights. And they're like, yeah, but we got no land. We got nothing to build on. And so, yes, there's been some take back of land. There's been some redistribution. Okay. Is that an extreme solution? Yes. But was it an extreme situation? Yes. I mean, what else are you going to do? You can't create more land. You can't create more resources than what you already have. And if all those resources were given away to certain areas or certain segments, again, you've got to find a middle ground. So do I think they're being discriminated against? I mean, you could call it discrimination, or you could just call it we're trying to balance the scales. This one, I have a hard time having a lot of empathy for the people who are saying they need to become refugees, and they're coming to, like, there's 46 of them on a plane right now. They're heading to Texas. White Afrikaners, Africanese, whatever the word is. I don't know. I mean, you got to find a balance. You got to be able to, like, okay, we want to have a balanced society. Well, to do that, you have to go back and maybe correct some of the problems of the past. You have to correct some of those things. You can't just say you'll work it out, it'll be fine. So are there some laws that they've passed that I don't like? Okay, so apparently, like, if you want to be a business and you want to go into South Africa, you have to have 30% black ownership. Okay, I understand what they're trying. I understand the intent. Is that a helpful law? Probably not, because people are like, okay, Elon Musk is from South Africa. Technically, he doesn't have 30% ownership of of his company in the hands of anyone else but himself, right? So he can't go in there, and so that was one of the things he made. But again, is this really like we're not allowing refugees from other countries, but we're allowing refugees from this one? And it's just one of those things where I just don't really think we should really be. I think we just don't quite understand the problem in South Africa. I think it's really easy to look at it from a black-white perspective. I think it's really easy to look at it from a current perspective. I think what you need to do is look at it from a historical perspective and say, this country has been twisted 6 ways over and over and over again. This country has been through some of the worst racial segregation you could imagine. This country's been through some of the most culturally divisive issues you could probably put on a country when it comes to this segment of being a human being. So I don't think it's really easy just to step in there and go, you're being racist against white people. Wait a minute, slow down. Okay, slow down. We throw the word institutional racism around in the United States a lot. All right. And we can argue that whether there's institutional racism in certain institutions in the United States, that's fine. We can argue that all you want. But if you really want a true idea of what institutional racism looks like when it's pumped up on steroids, look to South Africa. Look to South Africa. So do I have a problem with them trying to balance the scales? No. Do I think it's like something we should be advertising to the world? Because it sort of advertises it to the world. Like when Donald Trump in the United States says, we're going to take these people in because they're refugees, because there's racism, half the world listens and goes, oh, South Africa's racist again. Well, are they? Because almost the majority of people being elected to lead the country are white. So answer me that. Like, how is that? How do we reconcile those two? So here we go. Data shows that 73% of privately owned land in South Africa is white-owned, despite white people comprising of 7% of the population. In corporate South Africa, white individuals occupy 62% of top manager positions, while 72% of leadership roles are held by black managers. Okay, they've got some work to do. Like, this is silly, right? And I just kind of told you what happened, that there was a land grab early on in apartheid, right? You can't grow generational wealth. You can't grow as a country if only 7% of your population has 73, and probably the other, 27% of the land may not be good land, may not be great farmland, may not land you want really to live on, right? So something has to be done. Do I have the right answer for you with this? No, but a balance of the scales. Yes, I get that. But, they had a rally outside, make South Africa great again. Was it ever great? I mean, I don't remember it being great. I mean, I was born in the 70s, and since then, I remember it being a problem, right? It was great when Mandela got released. Like, oh wow, cool. That's cool. You got some work to do, but that's cool. Let's get along. But make it like, what exactly make South Africa great again? What exactly is this lady looking for? I mean, we can probably guess what the lady's looking for, but I don't, make South Africa great again. Sometimes people don't think. Some people forget their own history. All right. An anti-woke mission. It's such a convoluted history in South Africa to wade in there and just make it this basic slogan and cut it down to just a slogan. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. And so, I don't know. The idea that we're accepting these people as refugees, I mean, do they really look like refugees? I got a picture of one. Hold on. I got a picture of one. Here we go. Does she look like a refugee? I mean, I've seen a lot of refugees. I live in Mexico. I see them walk by on me on the street on their way to the United States all the time. I see them huddled in trucks, crammed in there on the highways on their way to the United States all the time. I know what a refugee looks like. That doesn't look like a refugee. She looks like she's living large. Refugees don't have houses. Refugees don't have brick patios. Refugees don't have clean clothes, right? They don't, all right? They don't smile like that either, by the way. If you're a refugee, you don't really smile. So to call this person a refugee, I don't know. What are we doing? This is weird. This is weird. To call this person a refugee. She looks like she's having a great life. She just looks like she's upset black people are in charge now. I don't know. Or they have rights. To figure out, like, you know. Yeah, she wants to apply for refugee status. Poses for a picture for a resident in Fish Hoek, Cape Town, South Africa, April 8th. Anybody else out there think she looks like a refugee? Think she's hurting? I don't know. Like I said, I see them all the time, refugees. I see them all the time from Venezuela, Colombia, Nicaragua, all right, from Guatemala, from El Salvador, from Mexico, right, from different parts of Mexico. I see them come from Asia, China, because it's easier to come here and then move up into the United States. I see Asian refugees all the time, right? They're all over the place. They're really friendly and nice. They don't really cause a problem here, all right? But they're really, they don't smile like this lady. They don't dress like this lady. They certainly didn't come from a place where they had a house in the hills like this lady. Look, she's got plants. She's got gardening going on. She's got like herbs and stuff over there. That's not a refugee. Why are we redefining that word right now? Oh my God. Anyways, that's who we're accepting now. Screw the regular refugees. We want the pretty. We want the really nice ones. We want the refugees that look nice. We want the refugees that look good. Oh my God. Oh dear Lord. Yeah, let me show you. Let me show you the picture. Sorry, I again running by myself. Running by myself. Here we go. This lady right here. There's your new refugee, folks. There you go. Sorry about that. I didn't have it up on the screen. Again, running solo. I'm old. What can you do? That's not a refugee. Nothing about her screams refugee. First of all, again, I mean, the fact that they own land. You can't be a refugee if you own land. You can't. It can't happen. All right. But yeah, there you go. That's who you're accepting now. That is who the president is accepting. Running from the cartels for your life? Nope, that's not good enough. Escaping communist China and the torture you're going on over there because you don't want to make iPhones for $1 a day and the suicide notes keep catching you every time you throw yourself out the window? Nope, not good enough. Nope. Syria's been in a civil war for 15 years and you're tired of chemical weapons going off around your house and you want your children to, grow up to be safe? No, you don't qualify. You're not a refugee. Your house is in rubbles. Your skin is a permanent orange color because of chemicals and not because of, spray tan. You're not a refugee. But this lady, she's a refugee. This is stupid. This is where the administration gets stupid, right? This is where the administration just goes, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. All right. Oh, my save stories. Oh, I love this. Whew. Prescription drugs. Oh, I'll touch on this. I know people are interested in this. I can only read so much of this. The Diddy trial started today. Yep. And they're already throwing out the race card. They've gotten the opening statements. Before they even got the opening statements, the defense doesn't like the jury. They said the prosecution was racist in choosing the jury. They filed a motion. The judge denied it, but you see where it's going. Anything and everything. The guy deserves a fair trial. There's only so much of this I can take. So for those of you that are interested in this, it started. Opening statements have started. Opening statements, they're probably over by now. But it is what it is. It is what it is, folks. There's only so much of that I can take. Gross stuff. Okay. All right. Oh, the other big news. I almost forgot about this one. China. they're announcing a trade deal with China. It's not really a trade deal, folks. It's we've agreed to a framework to take off tariffs. All right, to lower tariffs. Fine. Okay. My big problem with any trade deal with China, all right, is the intellectual property rights. Now, when I was working for Apple years and years and years ago, and we started opening up stores in China, all of a sudden, about a year later, we started to see things like Huawei and whatnot. Like, hey, that looks like our stuff. There's a reason. They don't care about intellectual property rights. Here in Mexico, we were walking through the mall, and there were 2 new stores, 2 new Chinese companies, all electronics, and it's like you could just walk in there and go, okay, that's Samsung, that's Apple, that's LG. All right, everything was just a copy of everything. So they don't care about intellectual property rights. And none of this in this deal. Now they talk about lowering tariffs, and they say we'll meet again in a few weeks. But there's really, China's going to open up. There's nothing on paper, folks. There's an agreement. There's a verbal agreement. That's great. I'm glad the tariffs are lowered. I think it got out of control real fast and shouldn't have. But there's no talk about respecting intellectual property. What's the point of being able to trade with a country that every time you trade something new with them, they just take it, copy it, and sell it real cheap? It diminishes your product, right? They don't respect international copyrights. They don't respect patents, things like that. And so much so, I remember we had people going from Apple over there, and they'd be living there for like a year. And this is how bad just counterfeit things are. They would have counterfeit beer, like it's not a Budweiser, but it looks like a Budweiser. It's not a Heineken, but it's not Heineken, right? Everything was counterfeit. They had counterfeit banks. No joke. There's this like thing in China, and especially in the smaller towns of China, you'd go into the small town, and they would build a bank. They build it, say, we're a bank, come put your money in. And the townspeople are like, oh, good, a bank we can trust, and here we go. And they'd shove all their money in, and then one day they'd wake up and the bank would just be gone. Like, it's just an empty building. It was a fake bank. It's a counterfeit bank. But they'd have all the regular papers and everything. Like, it's crazy, some of the stuff that you hear from some of the people that came back from China. Just telling you. They had, like, counterfeit lettuce, counterfeit vegetables, made out of stuff that was, like, edible, but you probably shouldn't be eating it. Like, it was molded, it cut, it looked, it smelled. It was amazing. They all this effort, like, to make it look like, but it's not. So you have to be real careful where you eat. So I'm happy that the tariffs are down, and I'm glad that they're doing a victory lap. That's fine. Go ahead, do your victory lap. The market seems to like it, but there's nothing on paper, and there's no mention of anything in any of the articles that I've read this morning about international copyrights and respecting that rule of law. And until that's respected, I really think opening up to China is just China saying, yeah, send us more of your stuff so we can copy it. It's crazy. I know a lady who, she has an Etsy store. What is it? Etsy, eBay, whatever, right? And they were telling me stories where now that they've allowed China access to Etsy and stuff like that, that they have these, stores that they have these, they sell these things that are all handmade, right? Indigenous handmade stuff. People make it in their house. I made soap. I made candles. I made whatever, right? Embroideries, jewelry, whatever it is that they're making. And they take their own pictures, and it's a lot of work, right? And they're going through and they're telling me all this. It's a lot of work, but they really enjoy it. It's how they supplement their income. And they put it on Etsy. They start having some sales. It's like, oh, this is going well. And then what happens is they get an order from China, right? They get an order from China, and they're like, okay, never had an order from China before, but sure. And they're buying like a ton of different stuff. And they're like, yeah, this is great. Send it away. So they send it to China. And then later on, these same people who are sending these orders to China are now looking on websites like Temu and Alibaba or whatever. And they're seeing not only their products fabricated, counterfeited, being made en masse and sold at a cheaper price, but they're actually using the photos that they themselves took and put on Etsy. It's ridiculous. It's like they're not even taking their own photos. They're like, you know what? We stole this stuff from this lady. Might as well steal her photos too. So they just copy them. It's the same photos. And they have to go through all this big process of notifying that company saying you're using my photos, take it, but there's nothing else you can do. Or eBay or whatever the companies that there's multiple companies talking about. So the idea of counterfeiting and stealing, it's what they do. It's what they do. If you go into go into a Huawei store, you'd be like, is this Apple? Because it looks exactly like Apple. Even down to the tables. It's just copyright counterfeiting. That's what they do. So until there's something, I'm not going to get so excited about a trade deal with China. I mean, I'm glad the tariffs are down because tariffs hurt people. But I think if you want to really focus on like something meaningful, protect copyrights, if you're going to protect the things that we invent. All right. I think that would be probably the best thing we can do for them. So, all right. With that. Oh yes. I promised you I'd talk about this. Here, hold on one second. Let me see here. Let me just do one more thing here. There we go. Bum, bum, ba-dum, bum. All over the place. So who do you fault for copywriting issues? The country that is known to do it every damn time a company moves to it, or a stupid company that does it. Well, I'm sorry if we actually trust them to actually, agree when they agree to not do something and they say, hey, we're not going to do this, and then they do it. It's like, who do you blame? So you're victim blaming now? It's like the girl, you're the kind of guy that says the girl was wearing a short skirt. She deserved it. That's like, thank you for the victim blaming. Wow. I didn't know we were victim blaming today. That's good. That's good. Your Honor, she had too much to drink. Yep, it's the stupid company's fault for trusting that the law would be applied equally across the nations. That's good. So I can't believe that's what we're doing. We're victim blaming now. All right. So do I blame them? Okay, what about the lady I just told you about Etsy? She was telling me that her shit was showing up on Temu. Blame her? Trying to make a buck? Try to have a side hustle? That's gross. That's gross. Oh, the day we start victim blaming. All right. Here we go. Last story of the day. Fight over Medicaid heats up as Republicans release the bill. All right. According to NBC News, if you read this, we are cutting Medicaid. Republicans are cutting Medicaid. They're not. Well, they are, but they're not for you if you're a citizen. Okay. You have to actually read through the article to get to it. All right, they released a 160-page section covering healthcare and Medicaid. The bill, and here's what they're cutting. Now, again, you can agree with it or disagree with it. The bill would make a slew of Medicaid spending reductions through policies, such as stricter eligibility verification. Yeah, you got to be eligible, okay? You have to verify that you're eligible. You have to be a citizen. Tougher screenings on providers who get reimbursements, and federal Medicaid funding cuts to states that offer coverage to residents living in the U.S. illegally. So if the states are offering Medicaid to illegal aliens, they're going to see their stuff cut. Again, you can agree or disagree with it. But that is what they're cutting. So are they cutting it for, like, if you're an ordinary everyday citizen? Not really. Are they asking you for a little bit more requirements? Sure, because there's been a lot of fraud with it. They're not going to fund the Affordable Care Act. That's for sure. That thing's... So they're going to let some things sunset on the Affordable Care Act, which I think is wrong. The Affordable Care Act, again, is one of those things where you can love it, you can hate it, but it's been around long enough that so many people are using it that if you do something to it, you better have something in place to take care of these people, because they've all bought in, right? They've all gone to the marketplace and said, I want health care, and this is the government offering me health care. And again, you may think that it's a shitty bill, it's a shitty act, but that's besides the point. It's been in effect for now over a decade. So you can't just say to somebody, "Hey, we're not going to offer this. It's like the fire insurance people in California during the fires, right? We're not going to give you fire insurance anymore. But I live here in the beginning. No, we're not going to offer it anymore. But there's fire. We're not going to offer it anymore. But I paid. We're not going to. Sorry. All right. It's the same thing. So if you want to cut the Affordable Care Act, that's fine. But you better have something to replace that with, because you're going to leave a lot of people without health care. And again, the easiest way to get bankrupt in the country, the United States, is to have a medical bill that you can't afford. All right. So do I agree with that? No. But am I okay with citizenship checks? Yeah. Yeah, I think Medicaid and Medicare should only go towards people who are actually citizens and actually paid in for it. Should states be offering their state-sponsored Medicare and Medicaid to illegal aliens? But that's up to the state. If you live in that state, should the federal government supplement that? Well, they're not going to, and they shouldn't. But that's up to the state. If California wants to do that, I'm all about states' rights. I'm a conservative when it comes to the Constitution. I'm all about states' rights. If they want to do that, sure, go ahead. I just won't live in that state, nor would I pay money to that state, nor do I want to give money to that state. I'm from Texas. Via Massachusetts, by the way. So I've lived on both sides. The bill would also have work requirements for Medicaid for able-bodied adults. Yeah, if you're able-bodied, like I'm able-bodied, like I may have like a condition, right? And it screws around with me every now and again. But I'm able-bodied. I can go to work. All right? I don't get Medicaid or Medicare or all that. I'm not on any of that stuff, right? But if I was, like, and they said, well, you need to work, I'm like, okay, well, I'm able-bodied. I can go work 80 hours or do 80 hours of community service, per month. That doesn't sound bad. Especially if you're without dependents. Now, there's a lot of, that includes exceptions for pregnant women and short-term hardship waivers in limited cases. Now, this is just 160 pages of a tax bill that's going to be about 1,000 pages long. So at least they released this 160 pages so we look at it. Now, the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, did put out a scoring on this bill, and the CBO says it's a $5 trillion deficit. So there's some reconciliation to do there. You can't pass a tax bill that's going to end up in a $5 trillion deficit over the next 10 years. You just can't do it. That's ludicrous, right? So I think they have to go back and kind of figure out what exactly they're doing to cut, what exactly they're doing to supplement. And I think even President Trump came out yesterday and said, yeah, if they tax the rich, they tax the rich. It's okay. He goes, I'm okay if they do that. Senate Republicans won't do it. But House Republicans and the president seem like it's on the table. And then they had to redefine what rich means. Rich for Kamala Harris and Joe Biden was $400,000 or more. I don't live in the United States, nor do I make that kind of money. But I think if I did live in the United States and made that kind of money, I wouldn't consider myself rich. I think rich needs to be redefined. I think if you own a small business, you could be considered rich when you're not because you own a small business and those profits. I think rich is something that needs to have at least 7 figures on it. Or at least higher 6 figures than that, $400,000. But yeah, I mean, they pay a lot now. They pay 37% tax bracket, but the person who's paying who's making $400,000 and has a 37% tax bracket, should they be paying the same tax bracket as a person who makes $5 million, or should that person have a different tax bracket? I'm okay with them exploring that. I'm like, you got to pay for it somewhere. Like, look, in the end, I don't like taxes. I don't like raising taxes to anybody, and I don't like punishing people for being successful. And I hope that's not how it sees. But right now, there's just way too much deficit. You can cut all the spending you want. There's still too much deficit. There's too many social programs out there that are necessary that are just, you have to fund. You have to fund Social Security. You can't not fund. I mean, if sure, they cannot fund it and watch the country just absolutely go into chaos because no one's going to be able to pay for themselves in retirement. It'll just be a miserable place to live. But there's things you have to pay. Certainly there are places you can go, but you can't stop funding certain things. And so you got to find the money somewhere. And things are just getting more expensive. So I think this bill is not going to pass, first off. In the end, when this bill gets released, it's going to be 1,000 pages. And I think there's going to be too much Republican opposition in the Senate. I know they're going to go through the reconciliation process to hopefully avoid a double vote, but I think it's just going to get stuck. I think it's going to get stuck. I think there's just, first of all, there's other things that they haven't even mentioned. President Trump promised no taxes on tips, no taxes on overtime, no taxes on, there was one other thing he wanted, no tax, Social Security. That's not in the bill yet. At least we haven't read that part. So if that's not in the bill, I can't see them passing a bill with some of his signature proposals that he promised on the campaign trail not in there, right? So those aren't in there. And again, it's only 160 pages of a bill that's going to be about 1,000 pages because this bill is going to affect the next 10 years, at least the next 10 years. And right now, if the CBO is scoring it as costing $5 trillion to the American taxpayer, I can't see them getting away with passing this bill. And the CBO is a nonpartisan organization. As much as people sometimes don't like what they do because they just crunch numbers and they tell you the reality, it's a nonpartisan organization that just looks at it and goes, this thing's going to cost this much money. And $5 trillion is a lot of money. I mean, maybe not the government anymore. Fear mongering, again, now that they're starting to get sides to it. Democrats circulated a letter from the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office with a preliminary analysis finding that the healthcare portion of the bill would cut spending by $715 billion and would reduce the number of people with health insurance by at least 8.6 million in 2034. Okay? So we have to look at that and be like, okay, well, why is this happening? And we can't cut, I mean, if they're American citizens and they're on their health insurance, we cannot allow that. If they're not American citizens, like who are these 8.6 million? All right. That's what I would like to know. Cut spending by $715 billion. Again, I'm all for cutting spending, but there's certain things you created, the country relies on. You kind of have to figure out a way to fund it. And Medicare happens to be one of those things. Trump and Republicans have been lying when they claim they aren't going to cut Medicaid and take away people's health care. New Jersey top Democrat on the committee said in a statement, let's be clear, Republican leadership released the bill under cover of night because they don't want people to know their true intentions. All right, this coming from the Democratic Party who passed the Affordable Care Act in the middle of the night with with Nancy Pelosi telling me, back in the day, just pass the bill, you'll read it later. Well, what's in the bill? Just pass the bill, you'll read it later. All right, so that's very disingenuous for any Democrat to say. All right, so again, that's just them taking sides. This is not trimming the fat around the edges; it's cutting to the bone. Waste, fraud, abuse, but they're cutting people's health care and using that money to give tax breaks to billionaires. Well, I just told you President Trump was all about raising taxes on the rich yesterday. He's like, yeah, I'm okay with doing that. He literally said that. So I'm not really sure where they're getting this. Again, it's just fear mongering. This is just more political crap. The largest Medicaid cut in history. Again, are we cutting it for American citizens or are we cutting it and saying illegal aliens aren't allowed to have Medicare? And you could say, hey, I want illegal aliens to have Medicare. That's fine. But if that's what we're cutting, that's what we're cutting. All right. So again, read the tax bill. It's not getting voted on yet. It's still coming out. I'm trying to read it when it comes out. 160 pages is a lot. I did not get through 160 pages of it because, again, it's a lot. It is a lot. But if you want to read it, let me see if I can find it. Let me see if I can find it. It should be at house.gov. House.gov. Let's see here. That's a legislative activity, intermediate doing business employment committee's leadership. The House explained. I don't want that. Committees, I don't want that. Yeah, because it isn't out of committee yet. Yeah, because it's not out of committee. They haven't posted it yet. This is just sort of like a portion. So it's still in the finance committee. And until they take it out of the finance committee, they're not going to post it yet. They're not going to post it yet, which sucks because I wish they would. Doing business with the house media. All right. But yeah, this is where you would find it. They would have it posted. And there's plenty of places you could find it later on. But yeah, 160 pages. So there's a lot going on. And it's really, honestly, you got to read the fine print of what they're really cutting and what they're not really cutting, because you just never know what you hear it from one source. You just don't know. Anyways, with that. All right. With that, it is sometime in the afternoon down here. I am going to take my break. I will be back a little bit later on. I've actually got some recordings to do, so I've got to make sure I do that. But with that, I'm still your Reluctant Gringo. I'm sorry I was flying solo today. I know that makes things a little cumbersome, but with that, I'm going to get out of here. Salut, I wave, everybody. It's past my time. We gone. Boom, boom, ba-doom.